What if you woke up tomorrow in the year 1840? No electricity, no running water, no cars, no telephones, no airplanes in the sky. In fact, no way to fly at all. A country only half its size, with a wild, unmapped West that most people will never see. A city where a fever can empty a building in a week, where children work the docks, and where everyone you love could be gone before they're 40. This is what it was actually like to be alive in the 1800s. Not a history lesson, but your life. So take a breath. Let's live it together. Open your eyes. It's not yet light, and the room is already loud. There are 6 of us in 2 small rooms, and beyond the thin walls there are dozens more families just like us, stacked floor on floor in this crowded brick tenement on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. A baby is crying somewhere below. A cart is already rattling over the cobblestones in the street. The whole building smells of coal smoke, of cooking, of too many people living too close together. This is home. My mother and father came over from Ireland on a sailing ship before I was born, looking for something better than hunger. They found New York, hard, dirty, dangerous, and somehow still full of hope. And here I am, a child of it, a New Yorker, born into noise and crowds and the constant roar of a city on the make. We don't have much room indoors, so the street is where I live. And what a street it is. Push carts and peddlers shouting their wares, oysters, hot corn, fish, rags, anything a person can sell. Horses everywhere, hauling wagons and omnibuses, leaving the cobblestones thick with muck that we children dodge as we run. Newsboys hawking the day's papers. Sailors and immigrants fresh off the ships, speaking a dozen languages I don't understand. Inside, our home is plain. There's a small stove, a table, beds shared among the children. When I'm very young, there's no running water in the building. We fetch it from a public pump or buy it from a water cart, and it's never quite clean. Then, when I'm a boy of about 7, the great Croton water comes to the city through its new aqueduct, and for the first time, clean water flows to public fountains. People gather just to watch it. It feels like a miracle. Food we buy in small amounts, day to day, because we've no place to store much and no money to spare. Bread, potatoes, a bit of salt pork or sausage, cabbage, and oysters. Oysters are everywhere in this city, cheap as anything, sold from carts and cellars on every corner. A poor family can fill its belly on oysters. We drink weak tea, and the grown folks take their beer. Sugar and coffee are treats. Meat, a proper piece of it, is for good weeks only. Lighting is candle and oil lamp at home, and out in the streets, gas lamps that a lamplighter comes round to light each dusk with a long pole. I love to watch him work his way down the block, leaving a string of soft flames behind him in the gathering dark. Let me tell you about the country I'm born into, because it would look strange to your eyes. When I'm a boy, the United States is barely more than half the size it will become, and most of its settled states cluster in the east, along the coast and not far past the Mississippi River. There are only 20-some states. Everything to the west is something else entirely. Vast territories, frontier, lands still held by Mexico or disputed with Britain, and the homelands of native nations that no map in our schoolroom shows truly. To a New York child, the West isn't a place, it's a rumor. It's where men go, and sometimes are never heard from again. It's letters that take weeks to arrive, if they arrive at all. And in my lifetime, that map is redrawn before my eyes. Texas joins the Union. A war with Mexico ends with the whole Southwest and California suddenly American. Then gold is found in California, and half the young men in the city seem to vanish overnight, chasing it across an ocean or across a continent of plains and mountains. California becomes a state while the land between it and us is still mostly unmapped wilderness to people like me. But the country is also arguing with itself bitterly the whole time over slavery, over whether each new Western state will be slave or free. I grow up hearing grown men shout about it in the saloons and read about it in the papers. It hangs over everything, like weather that won't break. I have to tell you about sickness, because in a city this crowded, it is the thing we fear most. No one yet understands that tiny living things cause disease. That idea won't take hold until I'm grown. So when cholera sweeps through, as it does more than once in my life, it moves through the tenements like fire. A neighbor is well at breakfast and dead by nightfall. The poor districts, packed and filthy with bad water and no real sewers, are hit the hardest, and that's us. People flee the city if they can. We can't. There are no antibiotics. The doctor, if you can afford one, may bleed you or dose you with mercury or some patent tonic that's mostly liquor. Children die here in terrible numbers. Fever, the bloody flux, consumption that wastes a person away over months in a room with no air. Nearly every family on our floor has lost a child. We lose one too. A little sister, here one week and gone the next. So we don't take a healthy year for granted. When the whole family is well at Christmas, that's the richest we ever feel. I do get some schooling, more than my parents ever had. The city has free public schools, ward schools we call them. And for a few years I sit on a hard bench in a crowded room with one teacher minding far too many children at once. We learn our letters, our sums, and we read aloud from a speller and a reader full of moral tales. The teacher keeps order with a rod and uses it freely. We memorize and recite, stand to answer, and copy our letters until they're neat. Paper is dear, so we work much on slates with chalk. But school always loses to work. As soon as I'm big enough to earn a few cents, I'm needed to earn them. So my schooling comes in pieces, the tween jobs, and stops far sooner than I'd wish. Still, it's in that crowded room that I first see a map of the whole country pinned to the wall, and first understand that I live in something enormous, with oceans on both ends and a wild middle still being filled in. I never quite stop wondering about it. By my teens, childhood is over. I work like a man, and in this city, there's hard work everywhere if you'll take it. I labor on the docks, hauling cargo off the ships that crowd the harbor. I run errands, carry, lift, fetch. Some boys go into the factories and workshops, the garment trades, 12 and 14 hours a day in close, hot rooms for low pay. The work is endless, and the wages are thin, but there's always more of it. What do we wear? Plain, sturdy, cheap clothes, mended again and again. A working man owns maybe 2 shirts and one decent set kept for Sundays, weddings, and funerals. Ready-made clothing is just starting to appear in shops, but most of what we wear is patched and handed down. Good shoes are precious. And the city does know how to play. For a few cents, you can step into the wonders of P.T. Barnum's great museum and gawk at its curiosities. There are theaters along the Bowery roaring with crowds, music halls and dance halls and saloons on every block, band concerts in the squares, prize fights, and street life that never truly stops. When the great park, Central Park, is finally carved out of the city's middle, ordinary families like mine can stroll on a Sunday in green space that once felt only for the rich. And there's courting. A young man walks a young woman home from a dance or a church meeting, sits with her on a stoop under her family's careful eyes. There are no telephones, no quick way to reach a sweetheart, only Sundays and letters and patience. When I begin to court the girl I'll marry, I save my best shirt for her and walk her along the harbor where we can watch the ships and dream out loud. And I have to tell you about drink, because in this century, it runs through everything. We are, plainly, a hard-drinking people. Whiskey is cheaper than coffee, sometimes cheaper than the milk. And in a city where the water can kill you, a mug of beer or cider can feel like the safer choice. Men drink at breakfast, drink at work, drink to celebrate, and drink to forget. Even children are given watered-down beer or cider without a second thought. It's simply part of life, woven in so deep that most folks never think to question it. And the heart of it all is the saloon. On a working man's block, there's one on nearly every corner, and it's far more than a place to buy a drink. It's the poor man's club, his parlor, his meeting hall. It's where you hear the news, find out who's hiring on the docks, argue politics, and where the ward boss buys around and quietly collects your loyalty come election day. Many a saloon lays out a free lunch, salty stuff to keep you thirsty, and a tired laborer can get a hot meal there for the price of a beer. When the Germans come in their thousands, they bring their lager and their cheerful beer gardens, where whole families sit out on a Sunday, and drinking becomes a little less a vice and a little more a pleasure. But there's a shadow over it too. Drink swallows wages that families can't spare. It empties pay envelopes before they ever reach the table, and more than one woman on our floor dreads the sound of her husband's step on the stair come Saturday night. So all through my life, there's a great crusade rising against it. The temperance folks, preaching against demon rum, holding their meetings and signing their pledges, some of them wanting drink banned outright. The whole country argues about the bottle, fiercely, for my entire life, and the argument is far from settled when I'm an old man. Let me tell you about money, because it rules everything here. A laboring man in this city earns perhaps $1, $1.50 for a long day's work, and out of that comes the rent for our cramped tenement rooms, which the landlord raises whenever he likes because there are always more desperate families ready to take our place. After rent and bread and coal, there is almost nothing left. A loaf of bread costs a few cents. Oysters, next to nothing. A pound of coffee or a few yards of cloth is a careful decision. We buy in tiny amounts, day by day, on credit at the corner store when we must, and we settle up when we can. There's no cushion, no savings to speak of. A single illness, a single bad month, a single accident on the docks, and a family can fall straight through into real ruin. We all know it. It keeps us working. By my 30s, I have a wife and children of my own, and rooms a little better than the ones I was raised in. Now I understand my own father, the weight of feeding people in a place that costs you for every breath. You ask about cars. There are no cars. The very idea of a carriage that moves itself would sound to me like a showman's tall tale. Our city runs on horses, tens of thousands of them. Omnibuses and horse-drawn streetcars running on rails down the avenues, hansom cabs for those who can pay, and drays and wagons hauling the goods of the busiest port in the country. The streets are a churning river of horses and everything that comes with them. To cross town is to brave it on foot through the muck and the traffic, or to pay a few cents to ride a jolting horse car packed shoulder to shoulder. To reach Brooklyn, you take a ferry across the river. There's no bridge yet. And you watch the harbor crowded thick with the masts of sailing ships and the smokestacks of the new steamers. And if you want to know how we travel any real distance, it's by horse, by boat, and now, more and more, by rail. To go west is to spend days on a train or weeks in a wagon over the open country. To cross the ocean to the old world is to spend a week or more on a steamship, packed below decks if you're poor, as my own parents were when they came. That is the whole of it. No one in my world has ever left the ground. There are no flying machines, no airplanes. The very notion belongs in fairy stories. The closest a person ever comes to the sky is the great hot air balloon they sometimes send up at a fair, a giant silk bag of heated air that lifts a brave fool above the rooftops while the whole crowd gasps. We watch it climb, and we cannot imagine that men will one day truly fly. That wonder is for a century I will not live to see. And what do people make of the idea of flight? Mostly, we laugh at it. Now and again, the papers carry a story of some inventor with a contraption of canvas and wood, a flying machine they call it, for the word airplane doesn't even exist yet. And folks shake their heads and call him a crank, a dreamer, a fool soon to break his neck. The old saying gets repeated in the saloons. If the good Lord had meant man to fly, he'd have given him wings. To most ordinary people, leaving the ground for good is plainly impossible, against nature, maybe against God. And yet there's a stubborn handful who won't let the dream die, who stare up at the balloons and the birds and swear that one day a machine will carry a man through the open air. We think them mad. History, it turns out, will think them the only ones who saw it coming. And these are the years the country tears itself apart and stitches itself back together. The war over slavery and the Union comes, and it reaches even into our streets. There are terrible, bloody riots in the city over the draft. Men I know march off south and don't all come back. When it's finally over and the Union holds, the nation feels both broken and somehow larger than before. And just a few years later, they drive the last spike of a railroad that runs clear across the continent. And suddenly, that wild western half of the map, that rumor of my childhood, is only days away by train instead of months. The country has been knit together in iron. Now I'm in my 40s, my hair going gray, my hands hard from a lifetime of labor. By the standards of my time, I'm no longer a young man, and I've buried more people than I care to count. Death has walked beside me my whole life, and I've made a hard peace with it. But oh, how the world has changed. I was born to candlelight and sailing ships and a country half drawn on the map. And now, the lightning wire, the telegraph, lets a man here speak to a man 1,000 miles away in minutes. There's word of a machine that carries a human voice down a wire, a telephone. Iron railways now thunder right over the streets on great elevated tracks above our heads. They're stringing the first electric lights through lower Manhattan, and people stand in the street at dusk to watch them glow without a single flame. And out over the river, they've raised an enormous bridge to Brooklyn, a thing of stone towers and steel cable that seemed impossible when they began it, and that I can now walk across with my own children. There are even whispers, mad whispers, of a horseless carriage that moves under its own engine. I think about my children, and I feel what my own father must have felt, that they'll live in a world I can scarcely imagine. The whole world of my childhood may be a curiosity by the end of theirs. So that's my life, a life in 1800s New York. And if you'd lived it with me, from that loud, dark morning as a boy in the tenement to these graying years as a man on the Brooklyn Bridge, I think you'd understand the one thing I most want to tell you. We didn't know we were poor. We only knew we were alive, together, in the greatest city of a country that was inventing itself. And most days, that was enough.